So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to lecture number 8 of Geography Environment in this lecture series called Prelims Powerplay 2026. Through this lecture series, we are going to revise our entire syllabus for UPSC Prelims. Entire syllabus. Static as well as current affairs. Everything would be covered. You don't have to revise these monthly current affairs magazines or PT 365s. Nothing whatsoever. Just follow this lecture series and everything would be revised. You will save yourself from that last minute panic that every UPSC aspirant feels. Okay, save yourself from that. Follow this lecture series. It will just take 1 hour of your day. 1 hour of your day from now till your prelims examination and everything would be revised. But you'll have to follow these 4 conditions, 4 steps. It's very important. Otherwise, this lecture series won't help you. What are these 4 steps? Number 1, watch the lecture on time and be regular with it. Every day this lecture would drop on YouTube at 9 p.m. Be regular with it. Number 2, revise and memorize the lecture. Memorize is the word from the notes. Then you will definitely have the doubts, some doubts. We are enrolling you in our WhatsApp groups. Ask your doubts over there. We are active throughout 24/7. Okay. So this was step number 3. And then along with this lecture series, you are getting a test series as well, with an exhaustive list of tests. Be regular with the tests. This is condition number 4. If you follow these 4 golden steps, these 4 conditions, nothing can stop you from being very well prepared for your UPSC Prelims examination. Okay? So you don't have to follow any other source. Just follow this lecture series and these 4 golden steps. That would be all. Okay. Let's begin lecture number 8, Geography and Environment. And our today's topic of discussion is CITES. Convention on International Trade in Wild Flora Fauna of Endangered Species, or Endangered Wild Flora and Fauna. Now, CITES convention is in the news, and why it was in the news, and why is this international convention which prevents illegal wildlife trade? Why is this convention important? Well, because this year, in the month of July, it completed its 50th anniversary. Okay, because it completed its 50th anniversary, it becomes important for us to know about it, and there is a high chance that an MCQ or some questions would be asked from this particular environmental convention. Okay, because of this 50th anniversary. So today's lecture is going to be short and crisp because we are only going to focus on illegal wildlife trade and CITES. But nonetheless, it is important because, well, 50th anniversary. Okay, so it becomes important. UPSC focuses on things like these. So make sure you pay close attention. And we will quickly begin today's lecture. Okay. So Geography Environment lecture number 8, CITES. Okay. Convention on International Trade in Wildlife, Flora and Fauna of Endangered Species. Okay. This is CITES. Now, before we talk about CITES, before we talk about this convention, before we discuss this convention in its entirety, in the minutest of detail, first let's talk about illegal wildlife trade. Okay, so what is this illegal wildlife trade? Okay, and why is this threatening? What are the problems? Let's gather some facts related to this, because an MCQ can be asked from this as well. Okay, so illegal wildlife trade. Now, illegal wildlife trade is a significant global problem characterized by illicit capture, poaching, hunting, smuggling the parts of wild animals, for example, horns of rhinos, horns of elephants, all these things, okay, tusks of elephants, sale of wild animals and plants or their derivatives. Look, some animals are endangered, some plants are endangered. That is why illegal trade or trade for these plants and animals is made illegal, but it is still going on. So CITES prevents that. Okay. Nonetheless, this is the situation. Now, it is estimated to be the 4th largest illegal global trade after arms, drugs, and human trafficking. The biggest illegal trade is that of arms, then it is drugs, then it is human trafficking, people, and the 4th largest black market of wildlife trade, illegal wildlife trade, well, is this only. Okay. Now, the market is worth billions annually, incentivizing poaching and smuggling on an industrial scale. Because the market is that huge, which means that there is high demand for these illegal wild products. Rich people are fond of collecting these wild products. leopard skins, tiger skins. I mean, rich people are fond of all these things. They collect it in their houses, estates, right? There is huge demand for illegal wildlife products, and people are ready to pay good money because there is huge demand, as big as billions of dollars. Well, there are these criminal enterprises who are ready to serve that demand, and that is why it is a huge industry. Okay, major routes where these wildlife products are smuggled extend across continents, mostly Asia, Africa, and Latin America, that is South America, with notorious hotspots like Golden Triangle in the Southeast Asia. I'll show you the map. Okay, Golden Triangle in the Southeast Asia. Three countries, Myanmar, Thailand, these countries, they are, well, very notorious for illegal wildlife trade. So it is a big hotspot. Now look at this map. Routes for wildlife trafficking across Europe. You see, the thing is, why are we singling out Europe? Because rich people are here. Okay. And these rich people create demand. But more wildlife animals are not found in Europe. Wildlife animals are found in, well, this portion, okay, Asia, Africa, and Latin America, right? So there is demand in Europe and USA, and this demand is served by criminal enterprises operating in these areas. Now, this region is the Golden Triangle, this Southeast Asian region, okay? And it is a big hotspot. Now, I am going to share an image with you, and that graphic sums up everything about illegal wildlife trade. Okay, this is the graphic. This I'm going to share it with you. This is very important. Save it somewhere. Okay, it is basically a mind map of sorts to cover everything related to wildlife trade, illegal wildlife trade. Okay, so illegal wildlife trade. What are the global hotspots? So this is the Golden Triangle. Then there is bush meat trade in tropical Africa. And then there is wildlife products trade in Russian Far East. These are the three hotspots. Clear? Then what are the motivations? What is fueling this demand? Okay, why are people involved in illegal wildlife trade? So remember these motivations. First of all, survival needs. Certain tribal communities use this for their survival. They hunt down animals and sell them. Okay, so this is one, but it is a very small thing. Main thing is economic interests, because there is billions of dollars worth of demand. There are these criminal empires who are ready to supply that. Okay, then culture and traditional customs. You know, rhino horns of rhinos, African rhino's horn is used in traditional medicine of China and Southeast Asia. So people who practice traditional medicine, like traditional medicine of India is Ayurveda. Similarly, Southeast Asia, China has traditional medicine. In that, a very important ingredient is made from rhino horn. But rhino horn is illegal. So they buy this rhino horn via smuggling, illegal trade. So there are various examples like this. And well, there is inadequate legal framework. Law enforcement agencies across the world are not that active. As you all know, the supply majorly comes from developing countries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Law enforcement agencies over there are not that active. So this is a problem. Okay. Now, what are the negative consequences? What are the problems? If we allow this illegal wildlife trade to flourish, what will happen? Number one, extinction of certain wild animals. Plus, there are certain species of wild animals which are key for the entire ecosystem. That ecosystem will get destroyed. Then ecological balance, like I said, ecosystem will be destroyed. Then animal welfare is one thing, because these animals are tortured, they are transported in very bad conditions, and you are basically hunting them, killing them. So animal rights are there. Then public health. Sometimes these wild animals carry diseases with them. When you export them to far off countries, those viruses and bacteria travel over there. Public health risk. And social stability, because these criminal empires who earn money through wildlife trade, well, they earn money which is black money. An increase in black money in any country destabilizes, ruptures the social fabric and political fabric of that country. Okay, law and order fabric also. So this is another problem. So save this graphic. Okay, it is very good. It gives you all the points related to illegal wildlife trade. By the way, let's take a look at the negative consequences. Again, it disrupts ecosystem, threatens rural livelihoods. Look, there are certain rural communities which depend on ecotourism. For example, certain rural communities near tiger reserves. Well, their livelihood depends on these tiger safaris, so this gets destroyed. Okay. Plus, certain rural communities depend on, well, minor forest produce. Okay. But if you destroy those forests, well, the livelihood of these tribal communities or local communities, well, it gets destroyed. Then public health risk, which we have discussed. Then economic impact. Okay. First of all, revenue from ecotourism gets affected, so economic impact. Then, well, government also has to spend a lot of money for conserving these wild species. So money spent in conservation, economic impact. Plus a lot of money is spent on law enforcement also. You give salaries, equipment to these police personnel. So all of this has economic consequences as well. Okay. Now, what is the way forward? How can we solve this problem of illegal wildlife trade, which is the fourth largest illegal international trade? Okay. Number one, strengthen legal frameworks. Okay. So that you can stop this menace. Then reduce demand via consumer awareness. Generate public awareness that because these criminal empires are active because there is huge demand for these products. Generate public awareness so that there is less demand. Enhancing law enforcement through international cooperation. Okay. Technology you use like drone, satellite, and capacity building. Training more and more law enforcement people. Then international agreements, which we are going to talk about, like CITES and national laws. And then engaging communities. Involve people, local people who will stop these criminal enterprises. Okay. So this is the way forward. That's all you need to know as far as illegal wildlife trade is concerned. Now let's talk about the most important topic of the day, and that is CITES. Okay. Now, CITES is basically a convention, and any international convention is international law. So it is an international law that regulates international wildlife trade. Okay. So it created rules and regulations which every country which is party to CITES has to enact in their laws. Countries who are parties to CITES will enact national laws. Like India has their own has its own parliamentary system which enacts laws, but the provisions in those laws would be from CITES. Okay. Now, CITES basically regulates international wildlife trade. Look, there is wildlife trade that is permissible also, but there is wildlife trade that is illegal. Both come under CITES. Okay, you have to take a license for legal wildlife trade, and you have to control illegal wildlife trade. All of this is under CITES. Okay, so let's talk about CITES. Okay, so the convention was first conceptualized in 1963 at a meeting of International Union for Conservation of Nature. Okay, IUCN meeting. But back in 1963, it was just conceptualized. It didn't come into force, or it had no shape. The final shape, or it was finally adopted in 1973, and it came into force in 1975. July 1975, it came into force. And on July 2025, it completed 50 years, 50th anniversary. That is why we are talking about it. That is why it becomes important for us to know about it. Okay. Now, the CITES Secretariat is administered by UNEP. UNEP stands for United Nations Environment Programme. So the Secretariat, which is in Geneva, Switzerland, is managed by United Nations Environment Programme. As of November 2025, CITES has 184 parties. Okay. India joined or ratified CITES in 1976. Okay. So this is the thing. Now, certain more key facts about CITES. So remember, CITES is a legally binding agreement. Legally binding international agreement. But what do you mean by legally binding international agreement? The thing is that CITES won't be used as a law in individual country. Okay, what do you mean by legally binding agreements? Well, any country signing this legally binding agreement will have to enact laws that are in sync with CITES. This is what we mean by legally binding. Okay, there is no policeman in India who will arrest a person, arrest a criminal based on that you have violated CITES. No. Well, India will enact CITES via its own law in the parliament. Okay, domestic laws are the ones through which CITES is enforced. So although CITES is legally binding on parties, each party implements it through its own domestic legislation. Remember this, okay? Now, conference of parties, which occurs every 2 to 3 years. Okay, conference of parties under CITES occurs every 2 to 3 years. It is the highest decision-making body. Okay, COP3, the third COP was held in Delhi in 1981, and the latest COP20, is going to happen on November 24 to 5th December in Samarkand, Uzbekistan. So remember, the latest COP conference of parties, COP20 under CITES, will be held in Uzbekistan, Samarkand. There is trade database also. CITES maintains a database of all wildlife trade. Okay, managed by UNEP, World Conservation Monitoring Center, on behalf of CITES Secretariat. So they maintain a database also. All the legal wildlife trade, well, it is entered into this database. So remember this database. Okay. Now, how does CITES regulate international trade? Okay. So all trade in species covered by CITES requires authorization through a licensing system managed by national management authorities. Okay, national management authorities, every country has their own authority. So anyone who wants to do wildlife trade in a legal way will have to take a license, will have to take authorization from the government. Okay, this is mandated by CITES. Now, CITES basically classifies different species into 3 categories, into 3 appendices. So species are listed in 3 appendices. Appendix 1. Species which are included in Appendix 1, well, they receive the highest protection. Commercial trade in these species is absolutely prohibited. Okay, you cannot trade these species like rhino, tigers, you cannot trade in them. It is banned. Yes, trade can happen for non-commercial purposes like research and development, conservation, all these things. But commercial trade is banned. Highest protection largely prohibits commercial trade. Species in Appendix 2, well, it regulates trade, regulated trade allowed to avoid threatening survival. So some form of concession is given to those species which are mentioned in Appendix 2, and species mentioned in Appendix 3 are more free. Species protected by at least one country requesting cooperation from others. So for example, tiger, India wants to protect tigers, and India wants that Sri Lanka or Myanmar also cooperate with India to prevent illegal trade in tigers. So that tiger would be mentioned in Appendix 3. By the way, tiger is mentioned in Appendix 1. Nonetheless, I'm just giving you an example. Most protected, medium protected, least protected. Species in this, well, there is complete ban on their trade because these species are, well, fighting for their survival. Okay. Now, approach to regulation. So what is regulated? Trade in what? Living species, dead animals and plants, they are regulated, and their products also. Okay, not just an entire rhino, their horns, not just an entire elephant, their tusks. So animal parts, plant parts, entire plants, entire animals, living, dead, everything is covered under CITES. Now, remember this word is important. It will come useful in WTO also. CITES follows negative list approach, which means only those species which are mentioned in either of the appendices would be regulated. If your species is not mentioned in any of the appendices, well, you are free to trade in that. This is negative list approach. It uses negative list approach where all trade is allowed unless the species appear on appendices. So the list prepared by CITES contains those species whose trade is regulated. If your species is not mentioned in that list, well, do whatever you want. This is negative list approach. Then trade control includes permits issued based on scientific assessment to ensure trade is sustainable, does not harm wild population. Clear? The convention enables international cooperation for combating illegal wildlife trade, promoting conservation through measures such as trade suspension in non-compliant countries. Nonetheless, now this is the approach to regulation. By the way, CITES has been in force for 50 years. Yet, we have discussed this, that illegal wildlife trade is still going on. Smuggling is still going on. In fact, it is the 4th largest item in black market, right? So what are the challenges? Why hasn't CITES been so successful? Well, these are the challenges. While CITES has been successful in reducing trade, illegal trade and smuggling persist, especially in some regions of Southeast Asia, Thailand and all. Critics argue for stricter enforcement and elimination of exemptions. No one would give exemptions. Scientific case studies emphasize the need for ongoing research and adaptive management programs to improve risk assessment, avoid detrimental effects on vulnerable species, all these things. Okay. Now everything you need to know about CITES is done, but under CITES, certain key initiatives were launched. So let's take a look at those initiatives as well, because they are also part of your syllabus. So what were some of the important initiatives launched under CITES? Number 1, Mike initiative for elephants, for protecting elephants. Monitoring the illegal killing of elephants program launched at COP10 in 1997. Okay. Then International Consortium on Combating Wildlife Crime. It was established in 2010, where CITES cooperates with Interpol, World Customs Organization and other law enforcement agencies. So it was a cooperation mechanism between CITES and other organizations. Interpol, International Police. CITES Tree Species Program, particularly for trees. Generally, people say that CITES focuses more on animals, but many tree species are endangered as well. So for them, it was launched, CTSP was launched in 2024. And CITES launched Strategic Vision 21-2030. This framework guides CITES efforts to ensure wildlife trade supports global biodiversity goals and sustainable development, all these things. Okay. Now, certain facts about India and CITES. So in India, CITES is enforced. Like I said, CITES will be enforced by national laws of individual countries. So what is the national law for India? Wildlife Protection Act 1972, which aligns with CITES. Which is the national management authority for implementing CITES in India? It is Ministry of Environment. But Ministry of Environment receives advice from Indian Board for Wildlife to implement CITES. Remember this also. Okay. And Indian government will give all registrations and permits for wildlife trade for any species lying in any appendices. Clear? That's all. That's about it. With that, we conclude today's session. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added some value to your preparation. In fact, I'm sure it has added a lot of value. Okay. The topics we are discussing in these lectures have a high probability of featuring in your exams. So be regular and consistent and follow these 4 steps. Watch the lecture, memorize it from the notes, ask your doubts and be regular with the test. It is very important because if you do this, you don't need anything for revision as far as UPSC Prelims is concerned. Alright then. With that, I shall conclude today's session. So yeah, I shall see you next time with another topic in this lecture series called Prelims Powerplay 2026. Thank you, everyone.